You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the political editor at the Daily Mirror, Pippa Crerar, and political editor at The Sun, Harry Cole. They'll be with us right up until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The last stand is the headline in the Metro as Ukrainian forces in Mariupol prepare for another onslaught from Russia, but with their ammunition starting to run low. The Eye claims an exclusive with details of what it says are Russia's plans to resettle displaced Ukrainians in the Far East and the Arctic Circle. The Financial Times reports that Ukraine is appealing for financial help, totaling tens of billions of dollars to plug the hole in its economy left by the conflict. The Guardian leads with an attack by Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer on Chancellor Rishi Sunak over his wife's tax affairs, accusing him of being an out-of-touch hypocrite. While The Star describes the Chancellor's response to the controversy like this: Mr. Stroppy. The Express leads with a plea from campaign groups for more help for pensioners suffering from the huge rise in the cost of living. The Mirror focuses on the case of one couple who say they'll never be able to afford to switch their heating on again. The Sun reports on the trial of a group of men accused of robbing former footballer Ashley Cole and his wife. The Mail says that emergency plans are being drawn up to avoid travel chaos at ports and airports, ruining people's Easter holidays. The Times, too, leads with the fear of travel chaos this coming weekend. Meanwhile, The Telegraph says that GPs have been ordered to work longer hours in order to avert similar chaos at hospital A&E units this Easter. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And I'm joined tonight by Pippa Crerar and Harry Cole. Welcome to you both. Let's start with the Metro and this a sad story, but the headline saying it took the jury only 18 minutes to unanimously convict Ali Harbi Ali, the murderer of Sir David Amess. Pippa.
Yes, well, it was only back in October, wasn't it, that David Amess was murdered at his MP surgery, and it doesn't seem like that long ago, really, that awful day that really sent shockwaves through Westminster. Of course, he's not the first MP that's been killed in this way, and in previous occasions, I think we've all felt that the security measures which were brought in as a result would go much further in helping protect MPs. But David Amess is one of those who regarded his interactions with his constituents as the most important part of his job and carried on with surgeries right across his constituency. Some MPs had decided to have them in their offices instead, where there's more staff around and possibly more protections. Sadly, back in October, he was brutally murdered by Ali Harbi Ali. And as you say in many of the front pages of the newspapers tomorrow, also say he was sentenced. He was found guilty incredibly quickly by that jury in just 18 minutes. He showed no remorse or contrition during his trial, and in fact appeared proud of his awful actions. And he'll be sentenced at a later date, but the judge has made it clear that he's likely to face a life sentence and probably spend the rest of his life behind bars. A really sad day for the family that sat there at the Old Bailey and watched that verdict being passed, and that sadness won't go away, nor will it amongst many of his friends and colleagues right across the House who felt this whole awful ordeal very, very personally.
Yes, a much-loved colleague. And the further detail that we heard, Harry, of Ali Harbi Ali, that he was self-radicalised.
Yeah, the ultimate fear of someone who can slip through the net so easily because they have done it to themselves online. The horrific details that I think scared a lot of people in Westminster is the number of years he spent planning this attack, the number of people, including Keir Starmer, including Michael Gove, that he looked up. He'd been found to have actually scouted out Michael Gove's house. He'd looked at the House of Commons and actually picked David Amess deliberately because of the lack of security there. And it's just a horrible feeling that, on a Friday morning when MPs go to their constituencies, their children, their families, their partners, all thinking in the back of their head, will they come home from work today? Slightly sort of bit of a charade of a trial, given that he had already admitted it. He clearly only pled guilty to get his moment in the dock to spout his bile. But I think the best thing we can do in this scenario is ignore all those things he said, and remember David Amess, who was, not everyone's cup of tea politically, a very socially conservative man, but a cheeky chappy with friends across the political divide, and someone who's sorely missed.
Indeed. The Telegraph's pointing to the Prevent scheme, which has been criticised. This is the counter-terrorism programme, because, of course, Ali Harbi Ali was known to the police, Pippa.
Yeah, he was referred to Prevent 7 years ago and actually boasted that he'd managed to basically hoodwink those who were running the de-radicalisation programme by sort of nodding and appearing compliant. And, the Telegraph has done this, has looked at the most recent terror incidents in the UK and established that, almost half of them involve individuals who have been through the Prevent scheme. And this obviously raises further questions about the scheme, which is already being being looked at, being reviewed, but amid concerns that it's actually not fit for purpose. And this is obviously not a new development. For some time, there've been concerns about Prevent and whether it actually does what it says on the tin and is capable of de-radicalising individuals, or whether some of them are so sort of sophisticated that and experienced that they're able basically to persuade those that they're working with that they are, they're no longer a threat. Obviously, Ali Harbi Ali was one of these. He just had one interaction with Prevent, but there's concerns, and have been for a long time, as I say, that the scheme is neither properly resourced to make a difference, nor indeed has the faith of those that are operating it. And if it's becoming toxic, as the Telegraph suggests, then it suggests that review, which already has been delayed, and I'm not expecting till the end of the year, whatever it recommends is likely to have to be followed. But then you're looking at potentially years until those recommendations are actually brought in, which leaves obviously the system very vulnerable in the meantime.
Harry, let's move on to Ukraine and the Metro, the headline there, The Last Stand. And this is Ukrainian soldiers saying that they're running out of food and ammunition. And this is the last chance to protect Mariupol.
Yeah, grim scenes tonight, and some really disturbing reports coming out of Kiev about possible use of chemical weapons in that siege. As yet unconfirmed, but the Ukrainians are pushing that story very hard tonight.
We're hearing that President Zelensky is saying that has not happened, really, the chemical.
It has not happened. Okay, well, so it's like a rapidly moving situation online tonight. But the problem was with about a week ago when it was that. The Battle of Kiev was essentially won, but that is one battle in what is shaping up to be a very long war. In the fact that yes, Putin was stopped in his tracks and turned on his heels and has pulled out of the areas around Kyiv, but however that has freed him up. Although he's taking huge and possibly embarrassing losses, he does still have a brutal army that can now be sort of turned towards the east of the country and perhaps. Dressed up as some victories there, dressed up as a way of sort of saving face in this battle. It's gonna the idea that this is anyway over, and all the sort of briefings and remarks we've heard from sort of politicians and defence sources and the like in the last sort of 10 days is do not get this isn't over yet, and this is going to be a very, very long haul. And I think Mariupol could be the first of many of these awful sieges that we're going to see, unless more arms are given to the Ukrainians, and not just defensive arms, aggressive, heavy arms that allow them to fight a very different battle in the east, in the open ground, versus the almost urban warfare that they were fighting north of Kyiv.
Harry and Pippa, thank you both for the moment. We are going to take a break. Coming up, more of tomorrow's front pages, including this in The Guardian, which leads on criticism of the Chancellor Rishi Sunak for his tax status by Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer. Do stay with us. You're watching the press preview. Still with me, political editor at the Daily Mirror, Pippa Crerar, and political editor at The Sun, Harry Cole. Welcome back to both of you. Let's have a look at The Guardian. An out-of-touch hypocrite. This is Sir Keir Starmer's criticism of Rishi Sunak over tax avoidance. Deserved or not, would you say, Pippa? Deserved criticism or not?
Well, you know, this whole affair has been an absolute gift to Labour because it's focused attention at a time when so many people are struggling, when the Treasury itself, Rishi Sunak himself, has put up taxes, put up national insurance right across the board. That's come into force. It's just at that moment he appears to have flouted some of the I shouldn't say flouted the rules. He stuck within the rules, but flouted the spirit, shall we say, of contributing to tax in the UK with his wife's non-dom status, and questions still continuing about how much tax she managed not to pay as a result on her overseas earnings here in the UK. Some suggestion it's around £20 million. It's been a political disaster for Rishi Sunak, so it's no surprise that Keir Starmer is attempting to capitalise on it there and you know, keen to keep the focus on it going into a second week. And he raises the question in the Guardian interview there about whether such super wealthy politicians can really relate to the public at a time when people are, you know, wearing extra jumpers so they don't have to put the heating on and struggling with the price of their weekly shop. Facing huge bills as a result of inflation and pressure on prices. Can somebody that has 4 houses, has admitted using 4 different types of bread at home and you know is so incredibly wealthy really relate to how those people are, those families are coping, whether they're struggling or not. Now, Rishi Sunak said today that he does understand that.
Let's just bring Harry in on that, because we're running out of time. We've got about less than a minute, Harry. Is the Chancellor a hypocrite or not? Is it deserved criticism?
Look, you can see, as Pippa says, Keir Starmer is obviously having a field day on this. I think there's a thin line to be trod by the opposition on this one without slipping into sort of all-out soak the rich class war thing, which could end up almost sort of tilting the balance of sympathies back towards Sunak if it starts to appear unfair. There's been some quite unedifying attacks, almost based on the fact that because his wife is Indian, that this is somehow, you know, the balance has to be kept right. The first time actually this week, Starmer's the one trying to make hay on this. For the last week, Sunak's been making this a disaster of his own making. He was the one fueling that story with threats of leaking inquiries and reporting himself to the Standards Commissioner. This is the first time it feels like the opposition have actually needed to say something to keep the story alive. Whether they can do that up to polling day in the local elections in May remains to be seen. But without some damning new revelations, I think it's going to be a lot.
Harry can hear me. Harry, thank you very much. And Pippa, we'll talk much more in the 11 hour. Thank you. See you soon.